I'm an old hippie from the 60s and 70s. So, I feel a solidarity with oppressed people because I'm an oppressed person. I kept my long hair and a beard. I love to smoke weed. I am not ashamed of it. I never tried to hide it. I believe in peace and love. I've been a pacifist since I first, started to understand the world about 12 years old. And I was a great admirer of Dr. King and of Robert Kennedy and of John Kennedy and of John Lennon, all people assassinated, in my opinion, by the U.S. government. I believe in what Gore Vidal said, we live in an empire with two right wings. Now, as far as this pseudo insurrection at the Capitol, I would like to make the point that I believe that these splinter groups, these white nationalist groups and other groups that obviously have lost their way in violence and conceit and hateful racism and bigotry, are actually abused children. They act just like abused children. I was a teacher for emotionally abused and emotionally disturbed children, and I understand this symptom very well. I was also raised by narcissists who hated me because I wasn't them, so I understand narcissism pretty well. I'm like the Mozart of narcissism. So I just wanted to take a second to kind of give you a perspective on all of this from a psychological point of view or even a metaphysical point of view. These people are abused children. They live in a fantasy world of their own making. For me, the definition of psychological insanity is when you can't tell the difference between your inner world of imagination and perception and opinion, between that inner world of your own psyche, your own thoughts, and the outer world of objective phenomena. When people cannot reconcile those two worlds, that's where you get this fake news. That's where you get this perceptual disconnect. What happens is people retreat into a fantasy world. Our civilization is ripe for this because of the media, because of movies, because of celebrities, because of politicians, because of all these role models who create ideologies, religious people too, that people sign on to and they identify with. It becomes their signpost. For me, it was John Lennon and the Beatles. Okay, that was my generation. I grew up in the 70s. Singer songwriters, James Taylor, Jackson Brown, all these cats, these sensitive singer songwriter types. That was my archetype. That was my pattern. And I patterned my life out. I became a folk singer. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm a philosopher, like my hero John Lennon. And that's okay. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But what is wrong is when you throw up these heroes for people like Donald Trump or like Pat Robertson or like Ted Cruz or Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or AOC. You create a pattern by which people identify. If people are emotionally disturbed people, if they're traumatized by the lies that are continually told in the media, the most egregious one is the Kennedy assassination. Full of lies. It's all lies. That was the real right wing coup. It happened in 1963 when they shot the president sitting next to his wife. That sent the message, right? Us fascists will kill you if you don't do what we want. That's what fascists do. They extort their will on people. So that was one. It was quickly followed by many more lies. Trickle down economics. There's no racism. The police are benign servants of the public. The politicians are beholden to the people, not the money. All lies. The Gulf of Tonkin that started the Vietnam War, a lie. Now, when you lie to the populace, you create these abused children. They may grow up to be people, but I think that there was a certain infantile childishness about this insurrection. The guy sitting in Nancy Pelosi's seat, the guy stealing the lectern, all of this, despite the dire consequences and the fatalities and injuries, this was all an infantile TV reality show play of what an insurrection is. because there were no political speeches. There was no eloquent or passionate articulation of their aims. They wanted to stop the election. They felt the election was false because they were told it was false by the president. So they wanted to shut that down. That was their aim. Did they do that? No. They just walked in, they vandalized like children will, and then they just left. They sauntered off to go and do their live feeds. Now, they didn't realize the consequences. They'll be shocked when they're arrested for crimes of sedition and treason and vandalism and breaking and entering and whatever else they'll throw at these cats. I mean, they'll be totally surprised, like any child will be, when they're called for to make responsibility for their actions. They exist in a TV reality show, just like the Celebrity Apprentice presidential edition. The president is a fool who lives in his own privileged rich boy fiction. He never took responsibility. He doesn't understand the responsibilities. He doesn't understand the checks and balances of our system. He is an infant and an emotionally disturbed child. And they are millions of these emotionally disturbed children. We're all emotionally disturbed children. We've all been the children of assassinations. I was 6 years old when John Kennedy was killed. It affected me on a very deep emotional level, as it did the rest of the country, but especially for children. We're abused and traumatized children. John Lennon was murdered when I was 23 years old. It destroyed me. I quit my military career. I left life behind at that time. I was only 23, but I was crushed. And it was by design to crush the spirit out of the evolving people who believe in the future, not the past. And that's what we're witnessing. Our world is now being torn apart by those who worship the past against those who want a better future for humankind, one that's not a fascist empire goose stepping across the world, stealing resources and killing people. We don't want that world. We want a world of peace and love and happiness for everybody. Universal human freedom. Not just for Americans, but for everyone in the world. Now that we're embracing this global world, we're going to have pandemics. We're going to have cultural problems, tensions, trying to understand the Muslim world from the Western perspective, or China. This is going to call on the best of humanity, not the worst, to pull it off. And we're at that point now where it's still hanging in the balance. Are we going to revert to a medieval past of violence and might makes right and fascism? Or are we going to evolve to an Aquarian future of global, universal love and peace and free trade among all the nations of the world equally and for all time? Creating a civilization that will not collapse in on itself due to the elites taking over. Because this is what happens to civilization. It's called civilization collapse. It's when the elite take over and steal everything from the working class and create a slave state. And that's what we've been living in. It's a neo-slave state, the 21st century colonialism. It's economic. The evidence is the minimum wage. $7.25 an hour for how many years now? Come on. Nobody can live on that, but they don't care. Tax breaks for the rich. The stock market doing great while everybody else is being evicted, unemployed, and dying of COVID-19. We are experiencing a rebirth, a renaissance, but it starts with the death of the old paradigm. It has to die, and this is its death now. This infantile, abused child response to life, to demand that the universe conform to our wishes, and to believe that we, each singular ego, is the epitome by which all things are judged. This is a very arrogant and conceited fallacy, showing us that we are not dealing with one pandemic. We are dealing with two. The pandemic of narcissism. This is the root of bigotry and of this reality disconnect that creates this insanity that was symbolically portrayed by this pseudo-insurrectional mob event It was a mob. Mobs are not connected to the intelligence. It's all emotional. Mobs are emotional. They have no intelligence. There was no political aim. There was no I have a dream speech. This was a useless and petty and foolish and infantile act by abused children who have lost touch with reality. And it's insanity. And it has to be dealt with from a context of psychological effects of a corrupt, absolute system of corporatism, which is fascism, and the elitist takeover of our government, of our economy, of our resources, and of our international policy. It has to be recognized as the abuse of absolute power by the elite, and they must be brought to justice. It must be illegal and an affront to human dignity and a crime against the future of humanity to have $1 billion or more. It's materialistic insanity, and it's destroying the planet, and we must reinvest in the power of the people over the corporations. If we do not bring these corporate titans to justice, they will destroy the world. They are abused and pathologically insane entities that must be brought to justice. And our government, based on slavery, genocide, and colonialism, must be reformed. We must now begin the transition from the United States of this corporate empire to the reformed states of America, instituting a parliamentary government. First Prime Minister Nina Turner, and join the rest of the world in a system that represents the people. The United States likes to say that our bicameral two-party, so-called two-party system, which is really a one-party empire, is the best government ever created. I say no. The parliamentary system is the best government ever created. It was created after our system and uses our system as a basis for which to create a reformed government that represents all segments of the people, not just the rich. That's our flaw. We were created by neoclassicists. We retain the genocide of the Native Americans, the enslavement of the African Americans, and the enslavement of the working class to the unlimited, unchecked gangster capitalism of the elite. And this is the struggle of our time. It's not Republicans against Democrats. It's the poor against the rich. And we must reform our world in order not to destroy all life on the planet, including human life. Let us not go extinct, save the future by reining in the elite class and creating a more representative government as our one goal of government, to represent the people, not the corporations. Thank you for your time and for letting me have my say. God bless you. God bless America. God bless the world. God bless every single human being on the planet. And Goddess of life on earth, bless all life on the planet. And let us reform our world and celebrate a time of universal freedom and universal, unending, and forever peace among all people in the world. And let us find the will to create a much better humanity that's not abused by their government. Thank you, and good night.
I am Lunge the Dinosaur, and I approve this message. Thank you. Let us not go extinct.